Greetings and welcome back to Moto Matters. Today's tech tip, we're going to be putting a new clutch in my 450. So very first thing you want to do, about a day before you start the project, is soak your fiber cork plates in oil. So you want the cork to be soaked in oil so it can absorb it, and the clutch will work much smoother, much better. You can actually damage the clutch if you don't soak it in oil first. Interesting enough, my 450 has 3 different kind of plates in it. So make sure you pay attention to know which is which. I actually stacked them and wrote on my container the part number so I know which order they're in. Or you can pay attention to your manual, which will tell you which order to put them in. As we see here on the breakdown. So important, another way to know, just pay attention when you take it apart. So since I just changed it on the bike, we're going to throw it on the side and swap out the clutch like the pros do. A little trick here to keep the bike from rolling away. You always want to knock it in gear, turn the bars full lock, and then lay it over on your stand. While loosening the clutch springs, go incrementally in a crisscross pattern to keep the pressure even. I always like to do it when loosening this way, but it's extremely important to do it when tightening. The same as when you put a wheel back on a car. We're going to be replacing the clutch springs, so it doesn't matter to inspect them, but there's a measurement for them of a service limit. But we do want to inspect our pressure plate for any damage, which we see none. And then also the bearing. Make sure the bearing's tight and smooth. Not all pressure plates have bearings, especially the older bikes. So you may or may not have to do this step. But everything looks good there. Next step is remove the plates. Now it's cork, fiber, then a steel or aluminum plate, fiber, plate, fiber, plate. As I said, this has 3 different kinds. There's a couple ways to do it. Individually, just grab one plate and lift up like this and remove it like that. Or you take a couple of hooks, get down underneath, under here, then the opposite side, and pull them all out at once. But I want to inspect them individually, so I'm going to remove them one at a time. But if you're just replacing all and don't want to inspect, just pull it all as one pack and then put it back in individually. Okay, my outer and my inner are different, so I want to specify the difference and note which is which. Okay, got the next, got the metal plate out. As you can see, the discoloration. Serious wear, serious damage, somewhat fried even. So this definitely needs replaced. Here is the new fiber, or the new steel plate. See how much less heat damage there is to it? So that's what we want. That is not. So I was talking about different plate. We can measure and look at the size of the cork versus the size of the cork fibers here to know which is which. So the outer are the wider, narrower, and the narrower, longer are the inner fibers, the middle pieces. There we are. This is the third different plate. You can see the inner diameter is much larger, so it's a much thinner plate. So note that. And you can see how fried it is by the oil it's leaving on my fingers. Here we have a different spring. It's convex or concave, and you can see the angle of it. Let's try and put it against a different color so you can see it better. That the inner part of the cone was down. Pay attention to which way it goes, and the manual has a picture to show you in case you didn't pay attention during disassembly. But I've learned, take your time, always pay attention, and lay it down as you took it out. Because we're doing reverse order, so that way you know when you just look at what you took apart to put it back in the exact same way. Alright, we want to inspect wear on the outer basket to make sure there's no slop and it doesn't click around. And as it does move, you can tell I'm turning the engine over. If there is free play and what in there, it actually means the basket is worn on the drive gear, and so the entire outer basket would need replaced. You also want to inspect and hear for wear. The old clutches used to get extremely worn out and dog-eared, and guys would file them, which would buy you more time. But you want that smooth for smooth clutch operation, and I don't feel any wearing or teeth binding on that, so we are good to go on the inner and the outer clutch. So it's simply putting it back together. All right, reassembly. We have our judder spring convex inside. Drop that down real nice. And then we go with our narrow, tiny plate. Once I find her. There we are. Oh, don't drop it. Hopefully your fingers work much better than mine. All right, now notice a hook versus a flat spot. And the question is, which side up, which side down, where do you line them up? Do you make them all go the same way, or do you alternate them? And I remember arguing and discussing. A lot of us guys just like them to look the same, uniformity, looking good. Other guys alternate them in hopes to get a better feel. They're talking with different mechanics. It's just really differentiated from mechanic to mechanic. Also the same with our steel plates. If you look real close, kind of has a rounded side and smooth. This side has a sharp lip and a better feel. Do you same side up or alternate? And it's really, do you want uniformity or do you want a chance for a better grab? I personally like the uniformity and have never noticed a difference between the two. So we're gonna make them all go the same way just because it's pretty. I know no one can see it inside the engine, but I know. Now these are all the same, so just alternate steel fiber, steel fiber. Now these are all steel plates in between. The old two-strokes you had option, aluminum or steel. Aluminum apparently had a better feel, and that's what came from the factory. Steel held up much better. I guess they're very similar to a steel or aluminum rear sprocket. Even though a steel was stiffer, that's what I always ran. Just for the longevity, the quality. Then our last router, which was slightly different. Here we go. Just cleaning everything off to get that nasty oil out of there. I'll put our pressure plate back on. I'm a stickler for how things go. I like it to go the same way. So I noted the MKE was up in this direction. So you're back to the exact same spot where it was. That's a detail you don't really need to pay attention to. But something I like to do. So I do it all the exact same. Less chance of things not working. Okay, we have the new springs versus the old springs. You can measure the old ones and make sure they're still in spec and reuse them. Back on the old two-strokes, we'd intentionally use old springs for a softer feel. Yeah, the two-stroke 125 or even 250, the strength of the spring wasn't that important because the clutch would hold up anyway, even with a weaker spring. On the 450, or if I had a two-stroke 500, I'd use new springs, which is what I'm going to do right now. But even if I had a 250 four-stroke, I might use old springs just for a softer, better feel, even though you're going to lose a little of that pressure, little performance. The amount of torque or horsepower the bike has isn't going to be a factor, where on a 450 it is. So I might opt for the comfort and lose a little performance. But here, I'm not. We're using brand new stiff springs, so that way this rear tire hooks up, stays solid. Okay, you'll notice the springs might not be centered underneath the bolt. So you want to take it, line it up as you actually crank her down and put some pressure on it to make sure you get a perfect feel and pull. And again, we'll crisscross pattern little by little until we get her tight. Then we'll break out the torque wrench and go to the spec, which is why you need your manual, which is 9 foot-pounds or 12 Newton meters. We're going to take a clean rag and wipe off the mating surface. Notice new roll ring. We'll take our pick, pop it out. We're going to do a better job. Take the bolts out first. There we are. Out with the old and in with the new. And I just might have to quit being lazy and take the bolts out. With everything I take apart, a thin layer of grease, because I did notice a little corrosion, and just a little bit of Loctite. Don't want to go crazy. Want it super thin, don't want to contaminate the engine. But just enough to keep the bolts from getting frozen to the aluminum. Alright, you'd think we're done, but not quite. We still have one step to go. I need to adjust the free play, and then the last and most important step after that is to test ride it. Test ride everything you work on, make sure it's in good condition before you go to the track and waste a trip and some money. You want an eighth of an inch. I often like to run a little more, closer to 3/16. You probably shouldn't, but I'd rather too much then have it get hot and not be enough and fry the clutch. Test ride went well. We're all loaded up and ready to go riding tomorrow. So stay tuned for next week's video.